No one helped the Hells Angels. When their garage caught fire, until an old black man showed up, they rode in to change their lives, then watched their new garage burn, while a whole town stared and did nothing. Tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe to Biker's Hype. If this story hits you, like it and share with a friend who needs hope. Main Street held its breath as 6 bikes rolled in under the noon sun. Thunder stacked atop thunder. Curtains twitched. Coffee went cold in midair. And somewhere behind a locked door, a mother whispered, "Please keep going." They didn't. They slowed. They parked. Oil on concrete. Heat shimmering. New strangers looking at a busted bay door with a for lease sign hanging on by rust and stubbornness. Malik killed his engine and listened to the town listen back. The quiet wasn't empty. It had opinions. Rico angled his shades. "Feels like their eyes have teeth. Then don't give them anything to chew," Malik said, and went to the door. The auto shop was a chapel of lost chances, peeling paint, a lift that moaned when you touched it, and dust like soft ash on everything. Malik pressed his palm flat to the dented steel of the garage's main beam. It felt tired. It also felt like it wanted to stand again. "This will do," he said. Tommy huffed. "Boss, this place is a dare." "Then we'll answer." By sundown they had a lease with grease fingerprints on the bottom edge, a mop bucket that used to be a paint can, and hope that smelled like cut rubber and old coffee. They ate vending machine dinner on the floor, chips, peanuts, a warm cola they split 6 ways. Diesel the stray dog watched from the threshold like a skeptical foreman. Across the street, a woman in a floral robe folded her arms hard enough to wrinkle the fabric. At the corner, a group of teens filmed and giggled, getting the skull patches without getting the men wearing them. Sheriff Dawson showed up at opening hour on day 2. The badge was steady. The eyes were tired. "You boys looking to stir things?" he asked. "We're looking to fix them," Malik said, wiping hands on a red rag. "Engines first. Maybe other things later." Dawson studied patches, scars, and the way no one reached for a wrench as if it were a weapon. "Maple Cross likes quiet," he said. "So do we." A beat. The sheriff thumbed his belt, then nodded a reluctant half-inch. "Welcome to Maple Cross," he tried, and made it sound like a warning. The town answered back with flyers. "Keep Maple Cross safe. Say no to biker trash." Cashiers forgot to see them. Church whispers cast long shadows that didn't care what the sun was doing. Malik kept his rule. Let time do the talking. Time talked. Slowly, a lawnmower tune-up here. A brake job for a traveler who would tell a friend who might be braver than the locals. The twins, Leon and Luke, rebuilt a carb like they were suturing a heart. Reese found humor where there wasn't any and planted it anyway. Big Mike lifted things that wanted not to be lifted. Rico laughed with the lid on. At night, the motel 2 towns over swallowed them and spit them back onto the highway each morning with sleep still in their eyes. In the in-between hours, they learned the names on the mailboxes they passed, and which dogs barked, and which just announced themselves out of duty. 2 weeks in, someone spray-painted "Get Out" across the bay door. The letters bled down like the wall was crying. They scrubbed it clean long before dawn. The door didn't gleam. It endured. "Again tomorrow if we have to," Malik said. "All year if we have to." Tommy flicked gray water off his fingertips. "And if it never stops?" "Then we don't either." The town didn't change. Yet. The universe, however, knew how to force a moment. The night of a shot, 2:47 a.m., Tommy's fist tried to go through Malik's motel door. "Fire," he said, and the rest he didn't have to. The road between there and Main Street folded in half under 6 bikes. Orange climbed into the sky like a beast standing up. The heat shoved them back 30 feet and dared them to argue. Inside, paint cans popped like bad fireworks. The new shutters screamed a sound metal wasn't meant to make. "They're just watching," Rico said. They were. Porches glowed with phone screens. Curtains blinked. Not one hose snaked across the asphalt. Not one voice asked if they were okay. Malik's jaw held a line because if it didn't, he didn't trust what would come out. "We came here to be better. Be better now." By the time 2 engines and a truck rolled in, the roof had folded like a tired tent. Chief Henderson shook his head before he made it all the way across the street. "Old wiring," the firefighter said an hour later, wiping soot from his cheek. "Bad luck. Wrong night. Wrong town," Malik almost said, and didn't. The fire left them a black rib cage and a decision. leave or last. They sat on the curb until their shadows were the only things that looked whole. We still got bikes, Leon offered. And each other, Malik added. And nowhere to put either, Tommy said, scraping ash from the heel of his boot with the edge of a coin. They asked for nothing. They were given less. Morning tried the sky on like a second-hand shirt. That's when the sputter cough of a rusted blue Ford rolled up and parked nose to nose with their ruin. The man who climbed out had joints that negotiated every step and eyes that did math. No. One else remembered how to do. You the bikers? He asked. We are, Malik said, standing because some people deserved it. You eaten? No, sir. You got somewhere to go? No, sir. He nodded once, like the answer was simple because the question was, I'm Eddie Brown. That's my granddaughter, Maya. A small face in the passenger window, braids tied with yellow, curiosity braided with them. You can't stay here, Eddie said. Come to my place. It's not much, but it's dry. Beans on the stove. Plenty of floor, sir, Malik said, and the word almost broke. You don't know us. I know enough. Eddie tilted his chin at the ashes. And I know this town. Get in behind me. Truck slow. Try not to run me over. Maya cupped her hands around her mouth. Don't go too fast. Grandpa says the left headlight's shy. Rico laughed, the lid off this time. They mounted up and followed the blue Ford through a town that lifted its curtains like a jury taking attendance. Mrs. Patterson was on her phone before the taillights cleared the block. Carol, you won't believe, Eddie Brown took them home. With that little girl. She paused, listening to judgment echo back. I know. Lord help us. The hardware store doorbell dinged for Frank Morrison. He'll get what's coming, he said to the air. And the air, which had known Frank longer than he had, said nothing back. Eddie's table. Eddie's house had been big when houses were built to outlast men. Now its paint flaked like old bark and the porch steps sagged into themselves. But the floors were clean, the coffee was honest, and the walls held a family you could trace by degrees of fading. Maya stood on a chair to make sandwiches. Diagonal is best, she announced. Yes, ma'am, Tommy said. Because some truths weren't worth arguing. They ate beans that tasted like mercy, and coffee that tasted like waking up to the right world by mistake. Eddie listened to the names and didn't flinch when Hell's Angels came with them. Maya asked why people hated them and didn't blink when Malik answered with the word, mistakes. We're trying not to be bad anymore, she said, verifying his math. That's the work, Eddie said quietly. That's all it ever is. In the middle of gratitude there was a bruise. Eddie's photo frames told the story he didn't make them tell out loud. Diane and Marcus. A graduation cap, a wedding day, a baby. Then a gap you could fall through. I'm sorry, Malik said, and meant it, and Eddie nodded like that was enough. When they slept, it was under blankets that smelled like sun from long before, in an attic where rain had rehearsed its rhythms on the roof for 50 years. Malik listened to old boards remember old burdens and decided this was what home sounded like when it was lending itself to you. Morning cooked eggs because Eddie wasn't about to let men who worked with their hands do it hungry. Maya's bus wheezed up the road and took her away with a wave that was bigger than she was. The house felt empty like a song missing a line. We'll go, Malik said. We're imposing. You're human, Eddie answered. Take what you need. Bring it back when you can. They left a promise, which was the kind of currency Eddie accepted. What kindness costs by lunch, half the town had an opinion with Eddie's name in it. By dinner, some of those opinions had rocks in their pockets. The first one cracked a front window. The second chipped paint Eddie hadn't been able to afford to replace in years. Where's your biker buddies? A boy shouted from his handlebars. They paying you? Finish that sentence, Eddie said when another slur tried to be born. And for a second, the boy saw a younger man standing where the old one did and decided to keep the rest of the alphabet inside his mouth. Power went out at twilight on a day when the sky was still hot. Eddie called the electric company and got hold music number 4, then hold music number 4's older brother. No one came. The neighbors watched his candles from their porches like television. When Maya came home, her cheeks carried salt and the day's dust. They said I'm bad because you used to be, that I'm like the bikers. That bad sticks, baby, Eddie started, and stopped because you couldn't argue people out of the lies they comforted themselves with. He put another candle on the table. The house flickered. The dark had the decency to be honest about why it was here. That was the night Ray Carter angled into the driveway with a truck that had been drinking with him. "You Eddie Brown?" he asked. "I am," Eddie said. "You owe me $500. "I don't owe you anything." Ray took a step and the porch didn't like it. The whiskey in his breath voted no on reason. The first hit split Eddie's lip. The second took a rib and asked for change. Maya. "Ran, you could mark that night by the houses she tried." Mrs. Patterson's curtain fell like a judge's gavel. Mr. Henderson opened his door just wide enough to send fear out through the crack. "Your grandpa made his choices," he said. "He's got to live with them." Maya ran anyway. Feet bare, ground hot, breath like knives. She made it to the back lot of what used to be a garage and found 6 men who already understood what you do when nobody else is doing it. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. They moved like a decision. Ray swung at the wrong man. Malik took the air out of him and then the ground. It wasn't martial arts. It was geometry. "Ambulance," Luke told the phone. "Elderly male, assault, conscious breathing, ribs." Sheriff Dawson showed up between siren echoes. He looked at Ray, then at Eddie, then at 6 men he'd told to keep the peace. "Twice?" he asked Malik, who nodded. "Twice," Dawson repeated. "Seems fair." Ray rode away cuffed. The bikers rode with the ambulance like outriders from some older story. The ER fluorescents were harsh, but the nurse's gentleness wasn't. "We'll keep her," Malik told Eddie when the gurney locked. "We'll be outside if you need us." He didn't say family. He didn't have to. The waiting room seats were bolted to the floor and somehow still felt like a circle around a fire. Morning brought apologies with the dew. Not everyone, but some. The kind that tasted like you'd had to bite into an old bitter fruit to reach anything sweet. Mrs. Henderson's voice shook. "We were wrong," she said, "the we doing as much work as the wrong." "Tell Maya I'm sorry." "Tell her yourself," Malik answered. Not sharp, just correct. The garage got a generator before Eddie's house did. That didn't feel like justice, so the bikers made their own. Extension cords through the kitchen window. A porch light that finally worked. A fridge that hummed like it knew what hope looked like in plastic containers. Betty from the diner brought a cooler with sandwiches and the kind of water that's cold enough to hurt first and help second. "Don't make me soft," she said, which was how some people said thank you for scaring me into being who I wanted to believe I was. Robert, a carpenter with hands that explained things without needing to talk, showed up because he couldn't stand to watch Leon ruin that railing. "You're sanding across the grain," he said, kindly as a correction could be, and then stayed 2 hours. Frank Morrison spit near his shoe and called it conversation. Mrs. Henderson told him to move along, and he did. Because a man who'd nearly drowned doesn't get to keep all his old opinions when the water is still in his shoes. By sundown, the house wore a cleaner face. The porch held. The window didn't threaten to slice the wind anymore. Eddie stood in the doorway with a posture his ribs didn't appreciate. "You boys did all this?" he said. "Had help," Malik answered, nodding toward the town that had begun to negotiate with itself. "Let me pay." "You already did," Rico said. "Beans and a roof." Eddie swallowed something bigger than pride. "Then come eat again," he managed. "Maya thinks diagonal sandwiches work on spaghetti too." They did. Somehow. If this moved you, subscribe to Biker's Hype and share this with someone who needs a little proof that second chances are real.